One of the nice features of the new CrazySite 960 and 740 is the inclusion of some smooth galleries, I call them, and smooth slideshow and smooth gallery. There'll be more to come, but basically they have a flash feel to them, and what they allow is for display on iPhone, iPad devices, and the variety of other that you can't view flash on. And so they give a very similar feel, and they're easy to update, just like all the rest of the plugins that I have for the CrazySite. So some of the important things to know are the dimensions, and I'm going to go through that, and then I'm also going to show you how to save the files. They can be done manually in a variety of programs, but I'm going to go through the steps of creating an action for saving these for the smooth gallery. And so what we have is on the left side the thumbnails. In the 960, CrazySite 960, they are 80 pixel by 80 pixels square. So if you have a program that saves them in the rectangular format, you'll end up with a squished thumbnail, which isn't as appealing. So you'll have to go through the steps of making these square. On the right side where the large image shows, in the 960 we have 720 pixels wide by 520 pixels high area. And so that's the maximum size you want the images to be. With this gallery, because of its use of Ajax and pulling in the images, which makes it very nice for keeping the file sizes low compared to our smooth slideshow, which has to load all the images in behind the scenes and then doesn't display them, just displays them one at a time, so you get the overhead of all those images. So there's a downside and there's an upside to it. But anyway, it's not too big of a deal to create them the proper size, and that 720 by 520 is the largest size. So I quite often make them 700 by 500, gives a little breathing room, and I can put a border around, and that will allow for all that. Now in the 740, CrazySite 740, the smaller visual size, it's good to keep in mind that the thumbnails are sized at 65 pixels by 65 pixels, and the large image area is 500 pixels wide by 400 pixels high. So again, those are the largest dimensions that your images should be. If any of the dimensions are larger than that, they simply won't show, which may stump you for a little while till you figure that out. So what we're going to do is, now we've discussed the dimensions, is I'm going to show you how I resize them in Photoshop and how I've created some actions to make that step easier. The first step that I do is create a folder on my desktop, and this is the key to making the actions work so that we don't even have to save. Everything can be saved automatically, and then it's a matter of just copying those images to your server. So I'm going to call this previews. That's the term I use instead of proofs. And inside the previews folder, I'm going to create another folder called TN for thumbnail. And that's the naming convention that's used in the smooth gallery. So you'll want to follow that fairly strictly. And we'll just close out of that. And that's where our large image and our thumbnail image is going to be saved. And then all we have to do is take that folder, transfer it to our server, rename it to the file name that you want, to put into the associated content in the smooth gallery, and those images will display correctly. So we'll open up Photoshop, and actually I'm going to select images from Bridge. I use those in tandem quite often. And normally I wouldn't be showing all from one wedding. In a gallery it might be a selection of brides or brides and grooms, so on. So let's just pretend that these are some getting ready shots. And for the sake of, even though I'll be resizing more of them, for the sake of creating our action in Photoshop, we need a vertical and a horizontal image. Now we could have a JavaScript and be able to use the dimensions properties to figure out which are horizontal and vertical, but that isn't available, as far as I know anyway, in Actions, so I don't find it too big of a deal to make a vertical and a horizontal. So first I'm going to open up the horizontal image into Photoshop. And for creating the actions, the first thing I want to do here is create a new set just for my own organizational purposes, and I'm going to call this set PhpCrazySite Actions, I'll call it, even though we know that's what it is. And then that creates a folder where I can keep any future actions that are related to editing in the PhpCrazySite. And to create a new action, then we go into that same menu by clicking the top right of the palette and select New Action. And being this action is for the Smooth Gallery, I'm going to call it that, Smooth Gallery, and I'm going to put horizontal so that I know which one it is, which direction we start recording. And the very first step then is to resize the image. I use resample, constrain, proportions, scale styles all checked, and bicubic sharper. It adds a little bit of sharpening that the regular bicubic doesn't do. So just select that out of the drop up, I guess it is in this case. So our maximum dimension again is 700 pixels, and we see that 700 by 500, so that fits perfectly within it when it's a 5 by 7 essentially cropping, 5" by 7" cropping. And we'll hit OK there, and there's our resizing to the proper size for the large image. And as I mentioned, I've made this a bit smaller so that I can add a little bit of a border. I go into Canvas, I'll select pixels here, I have black selected, and I'm just going to put a little 2 pixel border around for definition. Then we want to save it, and these are my preferences. I'm always after as small a file size as possible while maintaining a decent quality, and so use save for web and devices instead of save as, and that cleans up some of the extra information like EXIF data and so on, which isn't really needed in these galleries. So the dialog box opens there, and you have to play around a little bit in the JPEG quality compression settings. A lot like to use 80 pixels, 80% quality, and as you'll see down in the bottom right, it shows that for this image is at 156K kilobytes. Kilobytes. And so anyway, that we can see the difference by going to a 60, which I've found is a decent compromise. It gives me still a good quality with a much smaller size. It drops it down to 90K. So there's a substantial saving by going to that. Some go to 40 and 50. It gets a little pixelated, but they're happy with that. So that's something you play with and see what's acceptable to you. And then we're going to save, and then what we're looking for is the desktop and our previews folder, and that's where we want it to go, is in the initial previews folder. Save. And then the next step is cropping, and so what I like to do is just put from the menu an insert stop in. It isn't necessary if you find your cropping is consistent and it always does what you want, but I have images off-center quite often, the main content, or I want a smaller section of it, so I like to manually crop. So I'm just going to stick crop in here, and that gives me my stop. I'm just going to stop recording for a second because I don't want the actual crop being recorded. That's going to give me the position which would be standard. So I want to go out of my palette here, my tools menu, select the crop tool, and again it was 80 pixels, so we'll jot in 80 pixels there for the width, 80 pixels for the height, and that allows me then to go anywhere that I want and just select it. So now it's selected. I can start recording, and remember, being this picky about it only has to be done the once or twice that you're making the actions. After that, you don't have to be thinking about these things. And we're going to save that for the web. And I'm just going to use the same 60% quality compression. Save. And our desktop previews, but then we want this one to go in thumbnails. And that'll keep track for any future saves. And I always like closing it, because then I don't even have to go through that step. And I'm going to stop. So there's my smooth gallery horizontal. And now we're going to create another action called, actually first I'm going to open my image. And that's kind of important. If you start recording when you open the image, that's the image that'll open every time you run the action. So we've opened our vertical image now, and we're essentially going to run all the same steps as we did in the horizontal one. So let's create a new action, and we're going to, I copied that so I can just paste it in here, smooth gallery vertical. Start recording, and the first step we did was to resize it. And in this case, it's the height we're concerned with, and so we want a 500 pixel dimension there as a maximum. You can go up to 520, but with the same settings as before, all three checked and bicubic sharper. Hit OK. I'm just going to have it actual size so I can see, and then we're going to add a canvas, and again pixels, black, and I'm going to make that 2 pixels width and height for that little bit of definition. And then we go to save for web and devices, 60%, and we'll go to desktop, previews, and in that main folder, save. And then remember, I'm going to include a insert stop here, and call that crop again, or a square crop, whatever we want. Stop the recording so that the actual crop isn't included, and I'll make that selection, and I'm just going to grab this doorway, pretty little doorway here, crop it, and now we start our recording again, and we're wanting to save that. Save for web and devices, 60%, and this time in the thumbnails folder with the other one. Save, close out, don't save, and stop our recording. So we have there in our PhpCrazySite action set, smooth gallery horizontal, smooth gallery vertical. So now what I want to do is go back to Bridge, and this time for real we're going to resize. The actions are already created, so I'm just going to grab a selection of images here, and just grab those ones as if they were, say, a gallery getting ready shots, and I'm going to open those up in Photoshop. Okay, I just paused for a second because I'm on a slow network drive. These image files are, so it took a little bit for them to come in. But anyway, there's my selection of images, and this is how nice and simple it is once the few steps of creating an action has been done. So this is horizontal, obviously. I've selected horizontal, I hit play, and then the crop tool comes up, stop, so click stop, and I can have this ready at the 80 pixel by 80 pixel and just go right in on her face on the phone, and then play for it to carry on and save. Everything's closed out. This one is a vertical image, same thing. Stop. And so I can just make my cropping there wherever I want, carry on playing. We've got another vertical image. You can see that once the action's created, it's pretty easy, considering that we're not saving hundreds or thousands of images like we would in a normal for proofs for clients. What this is generally 20, maybe 30, maybe 12 images in a gallery. And so that's all we have to worry about. We'll go back to horizontal here and stop. That's a little annoying. It's nice if we can automate the crop, but depends what we want as far as precision in that vertical image. Stop. I'm just going to go up into the upper corner. I don't even have to go full size to be able to finish them off. Full size view, another horizontal. And just right in on their heads and finish that off. So as you can see, just in a few minutes, I've ripped through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 images. And it wouldn't take much to go through 20 in a gallery, or if we're only adding 1 or 2. And if we go to our desktop, the previews folder, then we open that up and see that all those files are in there at the dimensions we want: 702 by 502, 259 by 502, or sorry, 359, and then the matching thumbnails, 80 by 80 by 80, and they're all exactly where we want them. So once those actions are created, it really makes a sweet job of putting the galleries together. And then you can either duplicate this on your desktop and rename the folder. Let's say we call this Getting Ready is the name of the folder, and or we upload it to the server and name it Getting Ready. And then in the associated content area of the page that has the smooth gallery, we just put Getting Ready, and all those images will show up. So I hope that's helped you to streamline the process of making the images and the thumbnails to the proper dimensions and getting a nice quality with a small file size in the ChrazySite Smooth Gallery. Enjoy.